Yeah, you're gonna love it. Good morning. Welcome 504 coordinators from districts and from charter schools, as well as business administrators. Thank you for joining us this morning, June 6th, here at the Utah State Board of Education. My name is Momi Tu'ua, and I serve as the equity specialist here in student advocacy services at the Utah State Board of Education. And I want to introduce you all to my replacement. Many of you have already heard that I am going back into the field and serving as an assistant principal in Provo School District. And Holly Bell will be our new equity specialist here at USBE, and we are so thrilled to have her join us. And it's been great that we are able to overlap a few weeks and work together as we support you in the field. And with that, Holly has prepared to present to us today on the LEA expenditure report. So she's going to present most of today's training, and I'll come in certain parts and also answer some questions that you might have. So I'll just have Holly start this presentation, and off we go.
So it's great to meet you. I look forward to working with you. Momi has a lot of good to say about all of our 504 coordinators. She said you're on top of things, and that's been my experience in the field. So just to let you know, part of introduction that I started yesterday. And I will miss Momi as much as you will, because she has been a great advocate for counselors. I just came out of the counseling field. I was a school counselor for 8 years and in Jordan District, and spent the last 2 years as the counselor specialist. So I'm excited for this new position. I've learned so much in a day. But we have been talking. So the 504 expenditure report. So this comes from the board rule R27753. I'm excited about this because we've seen a rise in 504 needs, and I understand we're the first in the nation to lead out on in our legislature procuring funds, and so I'm glad that we have this report. It's excellent. It's really easy. I think Momi's done a really good job of making this easier for you to report, and hopefully this next go around, the legislature will make it a priority. I know that they're looking at that. So, so what is the current line item funding that we will receive? That doesn't exist. We don't have funding currently, and that's why we have this report created. Are there states whose legislators have provided line item funding? As I said, no. And so Utah is leading out on that. So as part of that board rule of the Senate bill, it was codified, and it was determined that we needed to provide a report by June 30th, 2018. And so I understand that that was created and submitted to the legislature, and then we need to gather more data for that. Do you want to say any more to that? Okay. And Momi will be jumping in. She'll also be monitoring any questions that you have as we go along. And as you can see, this is very similar to the presentation she gave on the 22nd. And so we will be reiterating a lot of information, but adding some new information.
That's right.
So number one is part of the board rule that came from that codification of Senate Bill, was it 81?
61.
61. So we've number one is not necessarily part of the report that is required by June 30th. This is something you're continually doing as you go along, and updating your students' information on UTREX. So this is just something you're continually doing, and there's no deadline for that. But we will be reporting the financial costs incurred as a result of the accommodations through UPIPs, and Momi will cover UPIPs more. So this is the board rule. It includes the 9 categories, and this is something that Momi's going to take over here in a second, but it shows the parameters that are included in the report. So I'll let you take it from here. You want me to go to the next?
You have different student information systems. I believe there's about 16 different platforms that are used that interface with UTREX at USBE. And so, like Holly was saying, the first part of the board rule speaks to the daily upload of your student information system to UTREX. And where we are currently building those parameters, you're probably seeing on your end when you go into your Section 504 part of your students' information that you don't necessarily see the 9 different categories. You don't see, I believe there's a entry date, but not necessarily an exit date. And so this is something that is still currently being built into UTREX, where your IT people at the district will build the coding so that, you know, there's this transfer of information that we can go into UTREX and download. So earlier when I did my training, I said that you could see that on your end. You could see the 9 different categories and the entry and exit date. I have learned since that you can't see it yet, that our IT people are currently building this. Therefore, your IT people aren't able to interface just yet. Okay, but this is something that you don't necessarily have to worry about in completing that connection. Your IT people they're working with our people here to meet the number 1 of this board rule. Okay, so if we go to the second slide, I also received feedback from some of you 504 coordinators that it would be nice for you to have the definitions to each of the 9 different categories listed in our board rule. And if you went straight to our board rule, if there's a really easy way to do that. You pull up a browser, and in the URL you type in R277-753, and it shows the entire board rule with the 9 different categories and their definitions. But I also wanted to provide it to you in our slides here today, so that we can uniformly report the disability or the impairment category statewide instead of interpreting it our own way. Okay, so we have autism here, disability of verbal, nonverbal, or social interaction that substantially limits one or more major life activities and does not require specialized instruction under special ed services. Okay. Brain injury or concussion impairment, short-term disability of the brain caused by an external physical force that substantially limits one or more major life activities and which adversely affects a student's access to his or her education. Hearing impairment, hearing disability that substantially limits one or more major life activity which may require assistive technology but does not require specialized instruction under special education services. Learning impairment, learning disability which includes but is not limited to dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia that substantially limits one or more major life activities but does not require specialized instruction under special education services. Major bodily functions impairment, I'm not going to read each of the categories, but the definition is impairment to any of the following functions that adversely limit a student's access to the student's education. And then we have from A through Q the different types of major bodily function impairments. Medical impairment, disability that is chronic or acute in nature, which may be active or in remission, and which substantially limits one or more major life activities, including but not limited to. And there again you see A through V, the different categories, subcategories. Then we go to mental health impairment, mental disability that is chronic or acute in nature and which substantially limits one or more major life activities, including but not limited to. And then again, A through E. I'll go ahead and read these. Anxiety, attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, or emotional or mental illnesses. The last two, orthopedic impairment, physical disability which may be ongoing or short-term in nature that substantially limits one or more major life activities and which adversely affects the student's access to the student's education. And then the last category, other impairment, any other disability not specifically defined in this rule which substantially limits one or more major life activities. So those are the 9 categories where you will eventually be able to report on for each of your students. Now the question has come to me, Momi, can we click on more than one impairment or disability category? And the answer is yes. You will be able to click on one or more of these 9 categories as reflected in each of your students' needs. Okay. The second part of the rule is really essentially why we're meeting here today, is to learn about the LEA expenditure report. It says that the LEA will report financial costs due to Section 504 accommodations annually by June 30th. And all LEAs need to report through UPIPS. It's a secure platform that allows for sensitive student information to be delivered electronically up here to USB-E. Now, this is a platform that special education uses. Our request to you is that if you do not have an account set up to transfer this LEA 504 expenditure report, please get with your special education coordinator, and that person will give you a username and password for you to upload this information. There's something else that Holly brought up. Am I supposed to be doing this or you?
Me.
Okay. There's something else that Holly brought up that I also wanted to share with you. If it is that your special ed coordinator is going to be the one to upload this report, even transferring this sensitive information within your email system is probably not a secure way of doing it. So the best practice is that your special ed coordinator provide this secure platform with a username and password through UPIPS and to you, and you directly upload that into UPIPS. Okay? And then the second part of this slide I'm going to have Holly talk about. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so I know with the first report that you did report some financial costs incurred, but you did that with all students, and so there will be some differences in this report. And it is due June 30th, but we'd like to have that report submitted by the 25th, so UPIPS will be open. After the 25th, we will be using a format called Move It. I know that some districts have that, and that would be a good way for you to also submit information across your district with your special ed coordinator. But for submitting this report, it will be through UPIPS, and then following that deadline, we will be contacting you. One of us will be contacting you to connect you to Move It so that we can meet the June 30th deadline. And in the last presentation, I know you said 30th falls on a Saturday, but that's part of board rule, and so you do have until Saturday if you have nothing to do on that Saturday to submit that report, but we can help you through that. Okay, the report is due June 30th. Y2 reports. Okay, so the November was to make an initial informed decision in allocating the funds, and then we're going to get more specific for them. So, and then all annually we will be submitting that report every June 30th. Okay, so here's something that I understand can be a little confusing. In the first report, we did report all students with 504s, even if there wasn't an expense incurred to support student needs. So we're going to go through the different tabs, but in tab 2 you will still be reporting those numbers. And then she's created tab 3 that will get more specific. I didn't cover. Okay, so tab 1 has the instructions with those 9 categories. Okay, so I guess this is a common question because we all know that there are a lot of individuals involved in the school in the 504 accommodations in those plans with the team. When we're reporting this, it will only be the percentage of time that you spend in administering 504s, and then your staff supports. So counselor hours, administrators, that's just part of their duties, so we won't be reporting those, but that will be in tab 2. Okay, so just again, you'll submit this data through UPIPS, which is a secure site. And the special education coordinator has access to that and can create an account for you so that you can upload these documents. So don't email that to either of us. Or you can contact Emily, by the way, I don't know her, but apparently she's very responsive, at USB to help you create an account. So there's her information. Okay, so here is how UPIPS looks. You'll log in your email and password that hopefully that you can set up, and then you'll go to document storage, that tab at the top. And you'll click on Add LEA Document, that's down at the bottom left. And then here you will put in the title and choose the file and save. I guess that's it. So this June 30th report, again, so if you are able to submit the reports through UPIPS, that is the preferred way. You have until June 25th, and then following that, we will be contacting you and connect you with Move It so that you can submit that report by the June 30th deadline. Okay, so here is our contact information. I guess we're not connecting to the report. Probably
do you have
need to do that. So let's exit out of this PowerPoint so you can see the specifics. This one.
Is that the locked one? Go up to the top. Do we have any questions thus far? If you do, you can type it in the chat on the right of your YouTube screen.
Okay, so let's go through the report. Here's that first, sensitive mouse, that has your instructions. So it has all of those categories, which should be set up in your student information system. If it's not, then hopefully that can be taken care of soon. And here, this gives you more instructions on the tabs. So let's look here with tab 2 and address this. And this is a locked document, so don't worry about changing any of the formulas because we have formulas set up in these two boxes that will calculate for you. So here's where you will put the number of all of your students receiving Section 504 accommodations. So let's give you an example. Say we have 120 students who are receiving 504 accommodations. And then the total salary and benefits of costs of managing that for the coordinator. So not any other individual but the coordinator. So let's say that comes out to that amount. And then other expenditures associated with the coordinator support staff. So if you have support staff, let's put in that amount. So you can see the total cost, and it will average out the administrative cost per student. So this would say $383 per student, and you will, I think that automatically goes into, so that automatically feeds into tab 3. So again, this is the total number of all students. You've already calculated prior on the first report specific information of those costs, but now this report is requiring something different. So this report is requiring those students who incur costs 150% above the WPU, which in this case is $5,092. So let's give you an example, and we've got an example up at the top here so that when you're filling out this report, you can already see the example, and then here's where you'll be putting in your information. So, so if you have student A, we're going to put in their student ID. I think it's 6 numbers typically, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the disability category. So this is one of those 9 categories that were listed. So let's say autism. And so this is your cost per student. Now, if the student is incurring other costs because of professionals or paraprofessionals, this is where you're going to be adding this information so that you're accounting for the total cost. So let's say that they are, I know OT came up before, and so let's say that they're receiving services from an OT professional in the amount of $8,500. And let's say that they have PE specialist services. Okay, so then when we go to the end, it automatically will calculate the total cost, and then here's this WPU, and then it will deduct or that amount so that you see the amount that exceeds that 150%. And so as you go along, you'll add this information for each of your students who are receiving 504 services. And then at the bottom, well, it will calculate the total. This, you probably have a lot who are receiving, I guess, depending on your population.
Yeah, we'll automatically calculate
that.
Yeah,
so, okay, so one question that came up is that we have students who are on an IEP and are receiving funds through IDEA, who are also on a 504 plan. And those students won't be included in this list, so even if they are receiving services from a professional or paraprofessional, they need to be allocating these funds from another source. And I know some districts have this set up, and they determine that from prior year funding and allocate that, but that's not always the case, and that's why we are requesting this funding from our legislature. I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm forgetting.
I don't see any questions. Do we have any questions from the field to clarify filling out this report, I know Holly said earlier that we don't include school counselors, principals, and teachers in the report on tab 2. The reason, well, we require just the district or charter schools section 504 coordinators percentage of his or her salary, including staff support salary as well. There is, I think you clarified the other parts pretty well, unless we have any other questions.
Well, and I would imagine with that first report that this will give you some information. You've already entered that information, so you can filter out the students who you know won't meet that threshold, and then adding students that perhaps were placed on a 504 in UTREX following that deadline in November. So hopefully this is a more simplified
it
report.
is. But your calculation that you did in November was just for 4 months, right? So your calculations will look different in this report because you're going to include all 180 days of school. So I would imagine that those numbers will increase in costs from your LEA, from your school. The other part that Holly was saying is your students. I've had several people ask me this question. If they're on an IEP and also receiving 504 accommodations, you do not include them on this report. They already have special education services and 504 supports coming under IDEA, so they are not included in this report.
Okay. So no questions?
I don't have any questions. Not yet.
Okay. All right. So I want to go to our website. Momi has done an outstanding job providing you with resources and information. And prior to my leaving the district, I actually did have one of our coordinators ask me about the updated 504 handbook. Okay, so let's go from the beginning. When we go to schools.utah.gov, and you'll click on departments and programs. It's not entirely intuitive the way that you get to the 504 information, so I know I have searched on keyword under student advocacy services, but so once you get to departments, you'll click on the equity school, student advocacy services, school counseling, equity, and prevention. And then you'll see at the top, educational equity. And here you'll see section 504. So here's where you'll find the handbook. There's a lot of other information that is helpful, but it's called the Guidelines for Administrators and Educators. Okay, so the thing I like with what they have done is they've made this interactive, so it is a long document. So here's contact information for the board members, and here is acronyms, which we all know education has a plethora, so this is very helpful for me. And here's your table of contents. So this is the interactive piece that I mentioned that will be very helpful. So there's a little bit bigger for you. So let's say that you want to look at some effective accommodation services. You can click that and it will automatically go to that section, so you can access that information. And then you can return to the table of contents. So I think this is very helpful. I'm going to read the entire thing. In fact, I would encourage you to help me to learn what you're doing. helpful information. I will be asking you a lot of questions, and any questions that you have for me, I will make sure that I find out the answers, because I'll have Momi on speed dial.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
And continue to email her. So,
Okay.
I think that covers everything.
Do we have, let me look here on our YouTube site to see if we have any questions. Okay. Oh, Stephanie. Okay. So we have a question here. Can you restate, are we only reporting students who had additional services potentially over the threshold in tab 3? The answer is, you report all students who are receiving 504 accommodations on tab 2.
So there's
so if you go to tab 2, and at the very top, you report the total number of students on that tab. But then on tab 3, you only report the students whose expenditures have exceeded the 150% threshold of 5,092. So tab 3 is only reporting on students whose expenditures have exceeded that 150% threshold.
It's probably, I would think, pretty clear who a lot of those students are based on the services that they've incurred above that 300. Well, it's just an example, so whatever that cost per student and the 5,092.
Mm-hmm. So tab 2 is you report on all students. Let me restate that. On tab 2, you report the total number of 504 students. Then tab 3, just the students whose costs exceed the 5,092. Really good question, because I actually have that asked in emails. I've had that asked a few times, so I appreciate you asking that question. Any other questions? Is there anything you want to clarify? Holly, can we go back to, we have a half an hour left, but I want to spend about 5 minutes in showing you the 504 website again. So if we go back to the USBE website, I wanted to also provide you other resources that we have, even written in Spanish. Okay, so I'm going to go from top to bottom on this 504 website. If you go to the very top of the page, we'll just go top to bottom. So contact information, the very first link is the Department of Education Office for Civil Rights and what they do, what their responsibilities are. Anytime students are here in the United States, we have a fundamental right that is due process. So in having a 504 team and making a determination of eligibility, at any point in time, if a parent is not satisfied with the outcome, then there's a complaint process that they can go through, a due process, where they can appeal the outcome to the 504 coordinator and to the district superintendent. And there's also a way that they can express their grievances at the Utah State Board of Education. And we're here to receive those concerns from parents. USBE supports districts and charter schools as well as families, and having the resolution take place at the most local level, we believe that a response is more immediate when that occurs. And so we help facilitate that discussion between the district or charter school and the families with the concerns. And at any point in time, should the family decide that they want to take this complaint to the Office for Civil Rights, they have the right to do so. And so that's why we provided this link here, so that you can become educated in this due process procedure, right? And then if you go to the next part, we have charter school coordinators and district coordinator information, and when you click on that, you can see your peers at other districts or charter schools and their contact information. The purpose of this is to provide to families, but also to provide to you. Perhaps you might want to collaborate with other coordinators in answering some questions that you may have, and how they provide accommodations to their students. So that directory is there for you. Then coming down, Holly already opened up the the guidelines for administrators and educators, but then there's other parts there that shows kind of a checklist to make sure that you are in compliance with Office for Civil Rights, having your non-discrimination statement posted, making sure that you have a team of people. It's not one person speaking to a parent. A team is a group of knowledgeable people of in the educational setting who know the student. And so these are some guidelines that you can look at as well to ensure that you're following our Section 504 guidelines from the Department of Education. Then when you go down, or the next one is the differences in legal rights and responsibilities in secondary and post-secondary education. There are some differences. 504s don't necessarily straight across get accepted by colleges and universities, but they do. The accessibility centers of the colleges and universities, they look at the 504 report. So it's important that you give this information to parents and students so that they can take it to the accessibility center of their college where they will be attending. It's best practice that they take this information during the summer so that the Accessibility Center can do their assessment and provide the information to the professors before the student even starts class their very first day of college. What we see sometimes is that these students with 504s, they fall through the cracks because those accommodations don't follow them into higher ed. Okay, so please remind your students and parents that they can take this information to the Accessibility Center of their colleges. Now, the parent and student, the parent, guardian, and student links there, these are the procedural safeguards that you can print up. Anytime you have a 504 team meeting, you always present the procedural safeguards to the parents. We have them available in both English and Spanish. If there's a high number of requests that is needed in a particular language, please contact us. We would like to facilitate having that translation be provided to students and families in your school. So these are just the different lists here that you can give as resources to parents, including transitioning from elementary to middle to high school, and high school to college, or to a vocational track. And then if you scroll down to additional resources, these are just some of the resources that give you guidance on allergies that students may have, and how do you provide supports to for them to access school lunch with allergy-free foods that they can eat. And so yeah, that's our 504 page for you. I'm going to go back to the Q&A to see if anyone has any additional questions. I don't see, let me refresh my screen just to make sure. I don't see any additional questions. Holly, did you want to say anything before we close?
I look forward to meeting all of you. This is an exciting opportunity. So.
Yes, and we are a resource to you, so please contact us at any time and we'll respond to your questions. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. from now through the 30th of June, we'll answer your emails and we'll contact those of you after the 25th of June. If you weren't able to upload your report through UPIPS, we will contact you directly to have you move this sensitive information through Move It. Okay, so we'll hang tight with you guys throughout the remainder of this month. Thank you so much. Have a great day.